Alright, I know this is super out of step with what I usually post on here, but, it's my YouTube channel, I can do what I want. And this is also something which I've been meaning to do for a very long time, probably even before I had a YouTube channel, so let's get to it. From 1963 up until the Seventh Doctor's last appearance, the Doctor was always portrayed with a cohesive structure. Even his most abrasive iterations, such as the Sixth Doctor, still held to his own well-defined archetype. In fact, one of the series' largest draws was its immense world-building. The writers had no end to their love of the Doctor Who universe. Continuity was practically the defining mark of the series, and this becomes even more impressive for a show spanning decades. Unfortunately, perhaps through an unlucky sequence of actors and writers, the series failed with the Seventh Doctor despite his 5 remaining regenerations. After a movie, in 2005, Doctor Who returned with totally new rebranding. This show, in classic early 2000s fashion, adopted a considerably more grimy appearance. The TARDIS was beige and brown and the Ninth Doctor was angry and abrasive. This is in stark contrast to his previous incarnations. Especially initially, a lot of long-term Doctor Who fans were annoyed. However, this did quickly die down once Russell T Davies began to understand his own direction with the show. From then on, Doctor Who was almost an entirely different TV show, save for one thing. It was still held together by its own continuity. Of course there are a few lapses and peculiarities, but it was still bound to that one principle. This really began to show off during the 10th Doctor's era. Rules were introduced such as the idea that the Doctor can regenerate limbs when within 24 hours of regeneration, and a more precise definition of the sonic screwdriver's functions were mentioned. This is where I believe the series made a first of many dangerous decisions. They were no longer binding themselves to the world and rules of the past 40 years, they were flagrantly inventing new ones, without any significant regard beyond a quick mention of an earlier encounter. So what problem did this actually result in? The problem is that this effectively fragmented the writing style. As time went on, even towards the end of Season 4, things began to become less and less like the old Doctor Who. The writers had to choose between writing adventures in the new universe and the old universe, two distinct themes. The old universe consisted of mostly logical alien encounters, technology, and everything was able to be explained with a mixture of continuity and rationale. The new universe had a very different focus. The alien encounters were sometimes arbitrary, there was a heavy focus on telepathy and other miscellaneous magic powers. If you don't believe me, see the Ood. Even the Doctor's regeneration became a force of indescribable power. I don't exactly have any problem with this because I enjoyed it. The two universes felt very separated, but I feel like Russell T Davies took it in an interesting new direction. And the problem lies here. For those of you who don't know, Steven Moffat is the current head writer of Doctor Who, but he also wrote one-off episodes such as Blink, the Girl in the Fireplace and Silence in the Library. These episodes were all pretty great. Despite his critical acclaim, Blink is personally my least favourite, but, I guess that's on me rather than him. After displaying his impressive skill at writing one-off episodes, he was given the title of head writer once Russell T Davies left the show at the end of the 10th Doctor's run. Oh boy, what a terrible mistake that was. To put it simply, Steven Moffat is terrible at writing story arcs. In fact, his skills seem to have steadily degenerated as time goes on. I didn't even think that was possible after Season 5. Let's start at the beginning to break down why a perfect storm of terrible things aligned to more or less ruin Doctor Who. Season 5 was the 11th Doctor's first season. At this point, a lot of people were already pretty apprehensive due to the actor's age. Matt Smith was the youngest actor to ever play the Doctor up until that point. As a whole, the season was a mess. The arc was clunky and Matt Smith didn't naturally fit the role. He was still trying to be given the quirkiness of his immediate predecessor without being a carbon copy. The third episode of the series, of course, brought back the Daleks in what felt like a frantic attempt from another writer, Mark Gatiss, to win back the audience with a fan favourite after the first episode showcased Steven Moffat's awful attempt at writing a female character. Let's get into just how awful this was. The female character in question was Amy Pond, a character first introduced as a 12-year-old girl, and not 5 minutes later an adult kissogram. Wow, cheap shock value kicking back against social norms. Some high-class stuff, Steven Moffat. This isn't the first time this simple, formulaic approach is taken to either make a character unique or to add depth. Despite this, Karen Gillan was a competent actor. She fit into her role to the best of her ability, but when she was written into a semi-romantic subplot with the Doctor, even though she has an outstanding boyfriend, there's only so much you can do to save her role. So on top of the cheap use of the Daleks, Steven Moffat brought back what he believed to be his signature villain, the Weeping Angels. This felt like yet again another cheap attempt to grab the audience back. "Hey guys, look, it's that one villain I write really well one time. Look, you liked it, don't you? Please like it." Unfortunately for Steven Moffat, he wrote the Weeping Angels terribly. In Blink, he laid out his own rules that Weeping Angels move faster than light when they are not being viewed, hence why they're able to move the victim back in time. This is why the Weeping Angels were scary. They appear harmless at first, though they possess unimaginable power restrained by something as flimsy as the human line of sight. The key here is that the power is unimaginable. The means by which they move is incomprehensible to humans. It plays into the old human instinct to be afraid of the unknown. However, in the Season 5 episode Flesh and Stone, Weeping Angels are shown to move. First of all, they move pretty bloody slowly for a creature which exceeds light speed on a whim. Secondly, the fact that they are shown moving at all makes their power imaginable. It makes the way by which they move comprehensible to humans. It removes the way that the enemy so elegantly played into the human instinct to be afraid of the unknown. In his notoriously clunky writing style, Steven Moffat has ruined his own greatest achievement by the 4th episode of the season. However, this is the first and only time that I can compliment Steven Moffat's writing. There is one scene in which the Doctor appears wearing a different outfit than he was wearing in the rest of the episode. Amy had her eyes closed due to a pretty flawed and totally random plot point, so only an attentive viewer would actually notice this, seeing as it wasn't drawn attention to in the plot. This was later noted as not being a plot hole, but in fact foreshadowing the Doctor's future travels, when he would come back for that scene in the season finale. However, that is the only thing that I will say about Steven Moffat's ability to write story arcs. The arc of Season 5 revolved around a mysterious crack in the wall. This crack ran throughout almost every episode and spawned numerous theories. The crack was effectively a discount version of Bad Wolf from Russell T Davies' Tool Belt. Perhaps my favourite episode from this season was Amy's Choice. This is not because it used any particularly effective storytelling techniques, nor even any significant narrative points, but rather because the episode explored the Doctor's own psyche. The Dream Lord, the antagonist of the episode, was a physical manifestation of the Doctor's own dark side. That's especially not to say that this was done well. They crept tentatively around the subject without making too many lore implications and ultimately left the whole episode being a lot less impactful than it could have been. Maybe a more accurate term for Amy's Choice would be that this is the episode that I felt the least disdain for. From here, a lot of the episodes felt inconsequential. Not many of them were special and none of them were especially flawed from here, though I'm sure that if I spent the time I could fill up several videos just picking apart how terrible they were. They brought back the Silurians for another round since Classic Who, but it felt almost insulting to the classic series. They visited Vincent van Gogh. There's a TARDIS-like spaceship for a bit, which almost had lore implications, until it didn't. Whatever. Now the season finale. I'm not going to break the whole story down, but this really exemplifies the way that Steven Moffat handles plot twists. Have you ever been told a riddle like, there are 10 cookies in the box and I take one out. How many are left? And obviously you answer 9 because 10 minus 1 is 9, but then the answer is 8, because when you weren't looking they took out another cookie, and actually there were 8 in that. You couldn't have known that, you didn't have enough information. Well, that's exactly what Steven Moffat's plot twists feel like. They're random, they're arbitrary, and they're totally unfair. Amy's boyfriend, Rory, was apparently a plastic soldier. He waited for 2,000 years to protect her. The Doctor just undid it in the same episode. What? Yeah, that's right. Totally arbitrary, and it didn't actually move the narrative forward whatsoever. Sure, it's cute conceptually if it was written with any amount of proper build-up, or if Amy even reacted like a real living, breathing human being, rather than the stupid archetype of the bossy woman that Steven Moffat loves to push so much, maybe it would have been good. Okay, let's move on a few seasons, because I'm not going to break down each season individually. So, on to Season 10. This is a season which doesn't include so much from Steven Moffat, and it shows. However, the 2016 Christmas special was written by Steven Moffat, and oh god. This took me several attempts to actually complete, since it was so unbearably dull, stupid, and contrived. It deserves a special mention. This episode is a poor attempt at creating a superhero story. Occasionally, an episode will take a common trope and apply the Doctor Who formula to it. I'm usually not a great fan of these episodes, but this was by far the worst of all of them. In fact, this might be the worst episode of Doctor Who to date. To put it briefly, a child eats a magic space gem and it gives him superpowers. Also, on a totally unrelated note, aliens invade for no reason, and the boy helps the Doctor defeat them. Also, there is an absolutely hilarious romantic subplot between the boy and his employer. To break down all the instances of horrific delivery, stupid lines, and insanely bone-headed plot devices would take almost as long as just watching the damned episode. It ended on a potential cliffhanger, but honestly, if they ever come back to this story, I'll be amazed. In fact, here's my public promise to you kind viewers. If they ever return to this story, I will provide a long breakdown of every stupid thing that happened in the original Christmas episode. Okay, what a great start to the season. So episode 1 of season 10 is pretty dire. It introduces the new companion Bill and the fact that she is gay. Don't imagine this is done with any subtlety or nuance. Stephen Moffat wrote this one too. The character development was lifted straight out of C-grade GCSE papers. Now, I certainly don't mind having a gay companion. Had it been written down by any other writer, maybe it wouldn't have felt quite so contrived that the first episode of the season focused on her having a female crush. Also, not 5 minutes into the episode and she was already started on a self-admittedly random tangent about how she was trying to buy romantic affection from a girl with chips. Pretty subtle, isn't it? But that's not the only problem with this episode, absolutely not. Though it's a minor gripe, Stephen Moffat insists on ignoring the fact that the TARDIS has a perception filter. This is described by Martha in The Sound as Drums as you kinda don't want to notice it. However, of course Bill is immune to this perception filter. The same perception filter that allowed 3 people to walk onto a military site unnoticed. Also, for some reason the Doctor condescendingly states that the alien is not human. It always rubs me the wrong way when the Doctor makes a meaningful distinction between humans and any other race, and implies that humans are inherently superior. The Doctor is a Time Lord. Time Lords are basically a straight upgrade from humans. There's no reason the Doctor cares for humans, but doesn't care for whatever that weird puddle monster was. Another minor gripe is that the Doctor said the Dalek-Mavellan War was one of the most dangerous places in the universe. The Doctor of all people should know that the Dalek-Mavellan War is not even close to the most dangerous place in the universe. Besides, even if it was, why did the Doctor not try to reason with the monster? Since when does the Doctor no longer value diplomacy with alien races? The episode also features pretty horrible pacing. I mean, it has to be pretty bad for me to notice it. I'm no connoisseur of television, but wow. This was terrible. The episode jumps straight from running with Daleks and explosions to a heavy emotional scene, with little to no actual transition. Stephen Moffat seems to assume that he can snap between these two distinct moods, and the audience's emotions will change accordingly. If you were just showing explosions of fast-paced tension, you have to take time to dispel the excitement before building back up to an emotional scene. In a similar vein to this, the jump scares in this episode were used terribly. It's the same cheap horror trick that a lot of Steam Greenlight games use to pride their scariness. Jump scares punctuate tension, they don't build it. Okay, so that was a lot of speaking for one episode. Now, while episode 2 is pretty forgettable, it was okay, episode 3 turns Stephen Moffat's lazy, apathetic writing style around. Of course, the episode wasn't written by Stephen Moffat, but rather Sarah Dollard. This episode featured the classic episode format used by Russell T Davies. Show a little bit of the threat, build the threat, and learn about the threat with the Doctor. The episode revolves around a fish monster who lives under the ice. It's a simple premise, and not particularly interesting in that regard, but the Doctor is written really well. He's written exactly how Peter Capaldi should be written, a spontaneous and whimsical character who is deceptively skillful. This is showed in particular in the scene when the Doctor manages to steal 3 pies after getting kicked out of a shop for claiming that he could probably steal anything from here. Now this isn't plot armor, this is exactly what the Doctor is. This is why the Doctor is a superhero. Without his skill, he has to have plot armor. Without his intellect, all he has is a sonic screwdriver and his TARDIS. If the Doctor wasn't the Doctor, he'd just be a boring version of Batman. Also, this episode is one of the few that uses the Doctor's sonic screwdriver correctly. Even in the episode, a line is written in about it being jokingly called a magic wand, something which I've taken to calling it mockingly for the sake of its ability to do stuff like heal skin in the episode Vampires of Venice in Season 5. This episode reserves its use as a device for emitting sound and light, primarily for scanning for data. Though the Doctor doesn't gather any data from it, he does use it to attract the aforementioned fish monster, using the aforementioned abilities. What a breath of fresh air. In addition to this, the Doctor gives Bill the decision to either save the fish or aid humanity's advancement. This is another move that is decidedly something the Doctor would do. He limits his role as a sole saviour of Earth. He tries to help and no more. He does not want dominion over the Earth and he doesn't want to decide its fate. Bill, as a human, ultimately gets the decision to release the fish. Episode 4 writes the Doctor similarly. The line where he asks the landlord for the name of the current Prime Minister succinctly tells him everything that he needs to know about the current state of affairs in the House. However, there is a line at the beginning which really rubbed me the wrong way. I can't remember the exact words, but here's the gist of it. The Doctor makes some awkward comment, throwing in how he needs to sleep after a regeneration. Bill, obviously confused, questions his usage of the word regeneration, and asks for some clarification. The Doctor immediately turns around and says something along the lines of, "So many questions." This is not how real people behave, it's not even close. The actors clearly weren't comfortable with delivering these lines. Since the Doctor is set to regenerate at the end of the season, I assumed that Stephen Moffat wrote this line into the arc. We've already covered why Stephen Moffat is the worst, so I'm sure you can understand why the fact it was presented so poorly leads me to this conclusion. At the time of writing and recording, episode 5 just released last Saturday. This episode was pretty good and I enjoyed it. It features Nardole, who is the perfect opposition of the Doctor. Other companions who play the Doctor's opposition, such as Clara or even Riversong, to some degree usually go the route of being obnoxious. They condescend him, and in a show where the audience wants to root for the Doctor, there is literally no point in doing this. However, Nardole is written perfectly. Firstly, his reason for providing opposition to the Doctor is on the Doctor's orders. It gives the impression that the Doctor is so powerful, even his closest opposition is still under his control. Secondly, Nardole does not imply the Doctor is unintelligent. He doesn't correct the Doctor whimsically, and he doesn't backhandedly dismiss anything. When Nardole does childishly demean the Doctor, it's not something that's on the Doctor, it's on Nardole. It's Nardole having a problem with something the Doctor did, rather than the Doctor doing something problematic. I won't go into the whole episode as closely as the others, because this is already pretty long, but I will comment on the closing line to the episode. In fact, just watch it, I couldn't come close to explaining it verbally.
Look at me!
Nardole, I can't. I really can't. I can't look at anything. Never again. I'm still blind.
So this is by far the most ridiculously clumsy line that they could have shoved into this scene. Why did he stand up? Why did he look into the camera? Why did he take off his glasses? Why did he make the claim, "I can't look at anything ever again," when he knows that he will regenerate eventually? Why was he keeping this a secret from Bill in the first place? It really shows off Stephen Moffat's poor narrative building. Also, there are several instances of the Next Time trailer for Extremis of the TARDIS translation circuit apparently not existing, so I'm already getting prepared to be indignant about that one. I can only hope that this show gets revitalized and Chris Chibnall takes over head writer in Season 11. God, how I hope it does, and it needs it, because right now, viewership figures are pretty low. Anyway, just be grateful that I made this one video and not like 20. I could have easily filled up a lot of space just ranting on about each episode on each season. If you made it to the end of this video, good job. Stay tuned for more Godot-related stuff. This is my YouTube channel. Maybe you'll get more Doctor Who stuff. I can't promise you anything.